Pirates of the Caribbean 4 on Stranger Tides is the film that gave this franchise the bad reputation that it has today, and in the eyes of me, and potentially many others, ruined the franchise. This film had a lot to live up to, and it could have given some new life into the Pirates of the Caribbean series, and it could have just continued at a normal rate, having these nice little standalone movies every couple years. But if you've seen this film, and the dreadful fifth one, you know that's not the case. Because instead of feeling like a nice little standalone adventure film like the original Curse of the Black Pearl, this film comes off as a direct-to-DVD sequel rather than an actual Pirates of the Caribbean film, which is a huge shame considering this film could have easily been great, but there's several things bringing it down, making it a generally mediocre experience and, if I'm honest, just a forgettable film. So today, we're going to be discussing the problems with this movie and how I would have fixed them, and the few positive things in this movie. So here's how Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tide ruined the franchise.
You're supposed to be dead! Am I not?
My biggest issue with this film is kind of a problem the fifth one has as well, is that it just sort of isn't a Pirates of the Caribbean film. It's just a pirates film. And by that, I mean it's sort of just a standalone adventure film which doesn't really carry any overarching story like the first three. This in itself, I don't have a problem with, because after the third one, if this franchise was going to continue, I kind of would just want it to be standalone adventure films like Indiana Jones or something. But the problem arises when you realise this is a Pirates of the Caribbean film, and the characters who are from that franchise don't really give a shit about the main plot of the film. That being the Fountain of Youth. The Fountain of Youth itself was actually set up at the end of At World's End, but we're told right at the beginning of this film that Jack already gave up on trying to find it, and it's said several times that he doesn't care about it.
Circumstances arose and forced a compelling insight regarding discretion and valor.
Meaning, he gave up.
I actually have no interest in the fountain whatsoever, so I found my desire for the fountain greatly lessened.
Right off the bat, this creates a similar problem to the fifth one, where Jack has no real involvement in the story because he doesn't really give a shit about what's at stake. I mean, the first act of this film literally ends with him being knocked out and dragged along in the plot, and at this point he has no real involvement in the story. This isn't as bad as the fifth one, obviously, because when they're on the ship they do give him some reasons to go along, but still, they aren't very good, and the film can't commit to any of them. At first it's to save Angelica's life because Blackbeard just wants to use her for her years at the Fountain of Youth. But this doesn't really work, because in the end Jack just ditches her on an island and she's never seen or heard from again. She's not even mentioned in the fifth one. Also, can I just say how stupid she is in the scene where she, takes the sword out of Blackbeard? She purposefully grabs it in a way that would cut her. Why? Why would you write a character to do something so ridiculously stupid and out of character? As weak as Angelica is as a character, we know she's not completely incompetent with the sword. Anyway, other Jack motivations are, it's revealed that Blackbeard has the Black Pearl in a bottle, and he wants to get it back. But this is also completely forgotten for most of the runtime and only really remembered at the very end of the film. And the other reason is just survival. But this also doesn't really feel fully thought out because there's several points in this film where I just question why Blackbeard doesn't kill Jack, as he's proved untrustworthy, and Blackbeard even steals the compass. And assuming he's as evil as the film constantly bashes us into thinking he is, why wouldn't he just kill him at that point? Another thing that just shows how this isn't a pirates film is that no one really cares about the Fountain of Youth. I've already said how Jack doesn't care about it, but the British only want it because the Spanish want it. But the Spanish only wanted to destroy it for some reason that is never explained. The only people who actually want it are Angelica and Blackbeard. But even then, these reasons are weak because Blackbeard only wants it because there's a rumour going around that he will die to the one-legged man, that being Barbosa. But the rules in this film establish that the Fountain of Youth lets you take the other person's years. It doesn't make you invincible or immortal like the curse in the first film or the Flying Dutchman in Dead Man's Chest or At World's End. Also, it is never visually established in any way that this rumour could come true in any way. So not only isn't this a pirates film, it's just conceptually broken, and just a piss-poor attempt to replicate the formula of Dead Man's Chest. And speaking of Barbosa...
Here, little muerta, remember? You shot me.
No, I didn't.
When I think of Barbosa in this film, it just makes me think of the incredibly obvious missed potential, because it has the seeds to be great, and I think that it's shown at its best in the scene where Barbosa and Jack are tied up to the tree.
Our own ship turned against us, tangling the crew, wrapping around them like snakes. and wrap it around my leg. But my arms were free and my sword was down. I am the master of my ship, not Blackbeard. I am the master of my fate, not Blackbeard. So I did what needed done.
Just think about this for a second. Blackbeard attacked the Pearl and had it turn against the entire crew, kills them, and traps Barbosa's leg so he has to cut it off and he escapes. That is fucking awesome! It just sucks that we're told this and not actually showing it. Seriously, imagine how much better this film would be if it opened on Barbosa sailing the Pearl and we see this entire scene play out, and then it cuts to however many years later and shows the court scene that's actually at the beginning of the film. Or at least have it so that Jack is aware that Blackbeard sunk the Pearl and is actually trying to get it back, and he has to go to the Fountain of Youth to stop him. This is better for actually connecting Jack to the Fountain of Youth and Blackbeard. It shows Barbosa at his best and makes Blackbeard actually threatening, because without what I just suggested, he's easily the worst Pirates of the Caribbean villain. Only really saved by Ian McShane's charisma and some occasionally decent dialogue. And because we don't actually see how Barbosa loses his leg, we only get told, I don't like the decision of giving him a peg leg. Because it mobilizes him for the film and makes him not as entertaining as to watch as he was in the first three. Even though when he does break his facade, he returns to his awesome self. But still. Also, I get that Barbosa siding with the British was just an act so that he could get back at Blackbeard, but it makes it so that he has to put on this act throughout a majority of the film which really doesn't suit his character. And his best scenes in the film are the one with him and Jack, and the scenes near the end where he acts like himself, even if a bit slower. It just shows us what this film should have been. What it should have been was Barbosa and Jack trying to get to the Fountain of Youth to stop Blackbeard and reclaim the Pearl. Have a similar dynamic to the third one, where they reluctantly have to work together for the greater good. In this case, the Pearl and stopping Blackbeard from living longer. Also, Barbosa siding with the British, even if for pretend reasons, completely destroys the world building of this franchise, and completely shits on the second and third film. The world building in the first three films in general was pretty fucking fantastic, as we knew how pirates fit into the world, and the second and third established the East India Trading Company was trying to end all of piracy, and they very nearly succeed, and in the end, all pirates band together so that they can stop it and overcome them. But in this film, Barbosa can just side with the British because they apparently conquered all of piracy? What?! But along with that, there's also just casually a bar in London filled with pirates?
What the fuck is going on?
So yeah, this film not only doesn't use Barbosa properly, it has loads of missed potentials just in the story and execution department. But while I have some issues with how they handled Barbosa, yeah, you know how I mentioned Blackbeard earlier?
You still love me.
If you had a sister and a dog, I'd choose the dog.
The new characters this film introduces fucking suck! And they are a big reason why this film feels so forgettable and insignificant. Let's start with Blackbeard, because I've already mentioned him, and I stand by the fact that Blackbeard is the worst Pirates of the Caribbean villain, because he just comes off as a bit stupid and evil for the sake of being evil at points. I already mentioned in my Pirates 5 video and a bit before how he's a complete dumbass, but for those who haven't seen that video, I'll elaborate. The entire reason Blackbeard wants to go to the Fountain of Youth is because there was a prophecy that Barbosa was going to kill him. But this in itself just doesn't work, because not only is this never visually established in any way whatsoever, why would he believe this, and how would the Fountain of Youth help? In any way. This is the entire crux of the fucking film, and it doesn't work or make sense. And when it comes to the point of being evil for the sake of being evil, this is where he truly becomes one-dimensional, because there's just loads of scenes where he kills someone or forces someone to do something just because he can. And there's no real deeper meaning to it. I mean, in the end, if it wasn't for Jack, he literally would have killed Angelica, his own daughter, to save his life.
No, sir. The truth is, it'd be much simpler than all that. I'm a bad man.
He also suffers from a similar problem that Salazar suffered from. While Salazar actually had an established backstory in connection to Jack, but he failed because in all the scenes outside of the one established in the backstory, all he ever does is say he'll kill Jack, so he just comes off as generic in the end. With Blackbeard, he apparently knows who Jack is, but they spend most of the runtime together and have no real relationship or character moments or development together. It's basically just Blackbeard wanting him to lead him to the Fountain of Youth, and Jack does it so he can survive, simp to Angelica, and get the Pearl back. All flimsy reasons that don't work. And despite the fact he's obviously a very powerful being, he never really feels threatening to Jack. Like, he never really seems like he's in harm's way. Compare that to Davy Jones in 2 or 3. You always got a real sense of danger from him, even if he was just standing there. While Blackbeard has actual voodoo and zombies, it still doesn't feel like a threat. Angelica also is a character that's pretty much just nothing when it comes to any sort of character. Her character is that she's manipulative and used to have a past with Jack, apparently. Something they also never visually establish or really develop throughout the story. It's just said that they were in love in the past. Okay. She doesn't develop throughout the story, she doesn't really do anything significant except pretend to be Jack, be fit, and eventually poison herself like a fucking dumbass. She's such an absolutely monumental step down from Elizabeth, it's actually unreal. But while she might be bad purely just because she's really generic and kinda bland, she's nowhere near as bad as the Christian guy. And can I just say, what the fuck? What even is this guy? What is his character? Why do him and this random mermaid take up so much time in the story? Neither of them have characters. They're just there. And I don't know why. Their existence is pointless, they add nothing to the story, they're cringy as fuck, and they don't even interact with our main characters in any meaningful way. Like, seriously, what the fuck was the point? I like Scrum, though.
All part of the plan, yes?
No.
So you might be questioning at this point, especially since I've already said that Dead Men Tell No Tales is the worst one, but I've listed some reasons in this video why this film actually fails harder than that one. Why do I even like this film? And why does it somehow still work despite all of that shit? Well, it's actually the opposite reason to why the fifth one is so bad. While the fifth one is a below average story that gets dragged down to the pits of hell for destroying the character of Jack Sparrow, this is a slightly even more below average story that is elevated to a pretty enjoyable status because of how amazing Jack is and how he carries the entire story. Seriously, Jack is fucking fantastic throughout this whole film. So good, in fact, that he makes this film watchable. And this is what solidifies him as one of the best characters in fiction. I said in one of my Doctor Who videos ages ago that good characters can save a bad story, but bad characters can't. And that remains true for this film. Despite this being an objectively bad film, I'm still going to return to it, just so I can see more of Jack being Jack. Despite all the bad characters, all the wasted potential, and the plot that was so obviously rushed it's almost embarrassing, this is still an enjoyable film because of how brilliant Jack Sparrow is. He has some of his best moments in this film. I already explained perfectly in my Pirates 5 video how this film gives us the best Jack escape scene ever, so I'm going to show you that clip. And then in the fourth one, they give us the most definitive Jack escape scene ever, and it's easily the most impressive. The second he's brought in and the guards leave, we can see him sussing out his escape. Looking at the exits above, at the windows a way to get out, and when he kicks the cake to the chandelier, it's a reveal to the audience that he's planning to use that as well. That's the plan already set in motion in about 10 seconds flat. How does he execute this plan? He pretends to be an idiot, shaking his chains around constantly to annoy the king to the point where he'll take them off. Step 1. Done. Now he needs to set someone up to pull the rope up so that he can get to the high point of reaching the chandelier. How does he achieve this? He eats a strawberry with cream on it so that he can have an excuse to use a napkin and throw it on the floor without looking too suspicious, and he then stands next to a chair as if he were going to sit on it, only to angle it in the perfect position of the person's trajectory. Right, so step 2's done. Now all he needs to do is get in position to have the guard shoot the rope that attaches this chandelier to the ceiling. Then after that, he jumps on the table and kicks food in the guard's face so that you won't notice the napkin on the floor and will slip on it. When the guard's slipping on the napkin, he grabs the rope which launches Jack up, and once Jack's up, he can swing to safety and escape. And the cap off to this scene is him grabbing the cake and eating it as he leaves. While I've analysed this scene bit by bit to explore its excellence, it's so naturally and excellently done in the scene, it's literally baba booey, baba booey, baba booey, end scene. It's perfection, and that's what's so excellent about Jack's character. He sets up these genius escape routes which would take a normal person loads of time to plan out in a matter of seconds in such a natural way that even the audience don't notice it's going on. And this isn't only the best Jack scene in the fourth film, it's one of the best Jack scenes in the entire franchise that encapsulates Jack perfectly. And he does have some other great scenes and genuinely great lines in this film. Like in the scene when he tricks Blackbeard into saving Angelica, he's pretty great in all the action scenes and just...
I am with child. Yours.
I don't recall that we ever had...
You were drunk.
I've actually never been that drunk. You know that feeling you get sometimes when you're standing in a high place? Sudden urge to jump? I don't have it.
Admit it, Jack. You still love me.
If you had a sister and a dog, I'd choose the dog. Shoot. Save me the bother of the fall. Did everyone see that? Because I will not be doing it again.
Mwah! But none of that is enough to save this film.
Filthy pirate.
So, that was Pirates of the Caribbean 4 on Stranger Tides. And this is the film that ruined this franchise and gave it the bad reputation that it's had for over 10 years at this point. This film had the opportunity to continue the franchise naturally and keep it going in a way that would please casual viewers and fans of the series, but instead comes off as a cheap spin-off rather than an actual film that develops the story in any meaningful way. And it's ironic that it comes off as cheap considering that this was the most expensive film of all time until Avengers Endgame came out. And that is fucking insane to think about because, well, in as simple as a way as putting it as possible, fucking how? With the third one, you can easily understand how it was the most expensive film at the time, because the film was the biggest the franchise ever got, and it has some of the most impressive CGI ever? Like, this film would still look phenomenal if it came out today, but on Stranger Tides, where did all that money go? Not that the film looks bad, because it doesn't. It still looks nice, and has some great direction at points, but I just have no idea where all this money went. It's the only one in the entire franchise that I have any problem with the visual style of it. Even the fifth one looks better than this, and it had the budget reduced significantly. But anyways, yeah, this film isn't good, and ultimately it pre-buried this franchise well before its time. If it had had more time and the story was more thought out, it could have easily been great. But as it is, it's a below average mess absolutely carried by the god that is Johnny Depp and the wonder that is Captain Jack Sparrow. And while even the mere thought of Dead Men Tell No Tales makes me want to kill myself, ignoring its destruction of Jack, it's technically a better Pirates of the Caribbean film, because it furthers the overall story and has better leads, a better villain, and uses Barbosa better. While this one is just a forgettable mess saved by Jack's charm. I really do have to emphasize how much Jack's charm saves this film, and just the lack of it massacres the fifth one. Also, I just wanted to say this, this is off script because I didn't know how to put it in the video naturally, but don't you think it would make more sense if this film came out a lot later than it did? Like, I don't think this is this film's fault. I think this is, like, At World's End's fault, because I think Dead Man's Chest, like, there was a 3-year gap between that and Curse of the Black Pearl. I feel like there should have been another 3-year gap between Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, because then it would be, like, a lot more impactful, having, like, to wait 3 years to see if Jack would actually come back to life, like, how Barbosa got brought back, like, all that stuff. In this timeline, At World's End comes out in 2009, then 4 years later, 2013, this film comes out. I think that would have been a lot more beneficial for the general marketing of, like, these films, because not only would that have given it an advantage in the YouTube scene, because it would be a lot more relevant and, well, current, because given the same gap between the fourth and fifth one of 6 years, was it 6? Yeah, it was 6, of 6 years, then the fifth one would have came out in 2019, and that would have had it be talked about a lot more. Yeah, that was just some fucking ramble shit that I didn't know how to put in the video naturally. I hope you enjoyed this. Obviously wasn't as in-depth as the Pirates 5 one, because this film didn't feel like it insulted me on a personal level, but I feel like this is a good sequel to that Pirates 5 video, because this explains the problems with the fourth one, which I do reference a lot in that video. Also, fuck Amber Heard. Sign the petition.